I should have left when Marcus went upstairs to grab his laptop charger. That's the part one keep coming back to, the version of that night where I just waited by the door with my shoes still on. Instead I sat down on the arm of the couch, because Diane was still talking. She'd been Marcus's older sister my whole life, practically, the one who used to drive us to practice when we were 15, who'd yell at us for tracking mud through the kitchen. I hadn't really looked at her in years. Not until that night, when she curled her legs up under her on the couch like she was younger than she was, and laughed at something I said like she meant it. "You've gotten taller," she said, which wasn't true. I hadn't grown since I was 17. I think she knew that. I think she just needed something to say. Upstairs, a door thudded shut. A drawer scraped open, shut again. Marcus was loud like that, you always knew exactly where he was in a house. "He takes forever," I said. "He does." She wasn't looking at the stairs. She was looking at me, in that unhurried way that made the room feel smaller than it was, like the air had gotten thick and slow. I looked down at my hands. She didn't look away. "Can I tell you something?" she said, not really a question, "and you have to promise not to tell him?" I said okay before I even knew what I was agreeing to. She leaned forward. The light from the hallway caught the side of her face. "I've been dreading you leaving for college," she said, "since the day you told me you got in." For a second I didn't say anything. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. Somewhere above us, Marcus's footsteps crossed the ceiling, unhurried, oblivious. "You're not supposed to say that," I said, but it came out quieter than I meant it to. Not a warning. Barely even a protest. "I know." She didn't take it back. I'd known Diane since I was a kid who couldn't tie his own cleats. She used to feel like family, the safe kind of adult, the kind who existed outside of whatever category one belonged to. But sitting there, I noticed things I had no business noticing. The way her sleeve had slipped off one shoulder and she hadn't fixed it. The chip in her nail polish, like she'd started painting her nails and given up halfway. Small, human, unglamorous things that made her feel less like Marcus's sister and more like just her. "I broke up with someone in March," she said, looking at her hands now instead of me. "Nobody you know. It doesn't matter who. What matters is I spent 4 months telling myself I was fine, and then you walked in here tonight in that stupid jacket and I wasn't fine at all." I almost laughed, except nothing about her voice was joking. "Diane. I know how this sounds." She said it fast, like she wanted to get there before I could. "I know what I am to you. Was supposed to be, anyway." The stairs creaked, not Marcus coming down, just the house settling, but we both went still like we'd been caught at something. She reached over and touched my arm, just above the wrist. Barely any pressure at all. "Stay after he falls asleep," she said. "Just to talk." I didn't answer her. I didn't have to. Marcus's feet were already on the stairs, and Diane pulled her hand back so fast it was like it had never been there at all. By the time he walked in, laptop charger dangling from his fist, she was asking me some ordinary question about my flight out in August, voice perfectly even, like nothing in that room had shifted at all. I answered her. I don't remember what I said. Marcus flopped onto the other end of the couch, already talking about something else entirely, and I sat there trying to make my face behave. Trying not to look at the spot on my arm where her fingers had been, like it might still be warm. It was maybe 11 when Marcus started yawning through his sentences, and by 11:30 he'd gone up to bed, telling me to lock the door on my way out, like this was any other night. I should have left then. I had my hand on the doorknob. "You're not actually going," Diane said from the kitchen doorway. "Not a question." I told him I'd lock up. "That's not what I asked." I turned around. She was leaning against the frame with 2 mugs of coffee, one held out toward me like an offering or a test. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from a friend, something dumb about weekend plans, and I silenced it without looking, which felt like its own kind of decision. "One coffee," I said. "Then I'm gone." She smiled like she'd already known that wasn't true. I took the mug. Our fingers overlapped for longer than the handoff required, and neither of us moved to fix it. We sat at opposite ends of the kitchen table, the coffee going cold between us, untouched after that first sip. The house had that particular late-night quiet, the kind where the refrigerator hum counts as a sound, where you can hear the other person breathing if you're listening for it. I was listening for it. "Say what you were going to say earlier," I said. Before Marcus came down. Diane turned her mug slowly on the table, not drinking it, just turning it. "I don't think I should." "You don't get to start something and then decide that." That got her to look up. "Fine." Her jaw tightened, like she was bracing for something. "I've thought about you as more than Marcus's friend for longer than I want to admit. Long before tonight. I told myself it was ridiculous. You were a kid the last time I let myself really look at you." "I'm not a kid." "I know that." Quiet. Almost angry, but not at me. That's the problem. Neither of us said anything for a moment. The clock over the stove ticked. Somewhere upstairs, the house settled again, a pipe knocking softly in the wall. "I should go," I said, and didn't move. "You keep saying that." "I know." She reached across the table, not for my hand this time, just close enough that our fingers were almost touching, a half-inch of table between us that felt like the entire distance in the room. "Tell me to stop," she said, low. "Tell me this is stupid and you're leaving in August and none of this makes sense, and I'll stop." I looked at her hand. I didn't move mine away. "Ask me again," I said, "when Marcus isn't asleep upstairs." She went very still. "Is that a yes?" I never got to answer her. Marcus's voice cut down the stairwell, not sleepy at all, sharp, awake, already halfway to angry. "Diane. Can you come here a second?" She pulled her hand back like she'd touched a stove. "Coming," she called, too bright, and stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. I sat there with my heart going, replaying the last 30 seconds, trying to figure out how much he could have heard. The kitchen was 2 rooms from the stairs. It shouldn't have carried. It probably hadn't. She came back down 4 minutes later, and her face had changed, not caught, not scared, something else. Worse, almost. She sat back down across from me but didn't reach for the mug this time. He wasn't listening, she said. He found something. On my phone, in the group chat with our mom, I'd sent her something about you back in June. Before any of this. She exhaled through her nose, a short, humorless laugh. I said I thought you'd grown into someone worth knowing. That was the word I used. Worth knowing, like a coward. What did he say? He asked me if I had feelings for you. She looked at the table. I told him no. That landed harder than I expected, a small, stupid hurt, out of proportion to what it should have been, given we hadn't even said the real thing yet. Why would you say that? Because it's not his to know yet. Her eyes came back up to mine, and there was something fierce in them now, something that hadn't been there a minute ago. It's yours. If you want it. Upstairs, a door closed. Not slammed, just closed. Final, somehow. I'm not lying to him twice, she said. I didn't sleep that night. I went home when she asked me to, not because either of us wanted it, but because there was a version of the night that ended badly if I stayed, and she knew it before I did. 3 days passed. Marcus texted like normal, no mention of anything, which was somehow worse than if he'd said something. I kept picking up my phone to write to her and putting it back down, for different half-finished messages I never sent. She's the one who showed up. Tuesday evening, no warning, standing on my porch in a coat that wasn't warm enough for how long she must have been sitting in her car outside deciding whether to knock. I told him, she said, before I'd even gotten the door all the way open. Everything. That I'd lied, that it wasn't nothing, that I didn't know what it was, but I wasn't going to keep saying no to something just because it was easier for him to hear. What did he say? That he needed time. That it was weird, and he's allowed to think that, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't. She wrapped her arms around herself. But I'm done pretending it's nothing. I'm too old to keep doing that to myself. I stepped back from the door, and she came in, and neither of us said anything else for a second, just stood in my hallway, the porch light throwing a yellow line across the floor between us. I don't know what this is either, I said. But I don't want to keep almost saying it. So say it. I've been thinking about you since June, I said. Maybe before that. I just didn't have the word for it. She reached up, finally, and touched my face like she'd been waiting 3 days to be allowed to. Marcus came around eventually, though it took longer than either of us expected. A few weeks of stiff phone calls, a Sunday dinner where he barely looked at me, and then, slowly, the old ease creeping back in, different but not broken. He never fully explained what changed his mind. I think it was watching his sister be happy in a way he hadn't seen in years and deciding he'd rather have that than be right about how strange it looked from the outside. I didn't go away to college that August. I deferred a year, then didn't go at all, and I used to think I'd regret that more than I do. Diane still has that chipped nail polish habit, starts, gets interrupted, never finishes the other hand. I notice it now on purpose, the way you notice things about someone once you've earned the right to. What I keep coming back to isn't the almost moments, the coffee, the hand on my arm, the 4 unsent texts. It's that she never once apologized for wanting me. She apologized for the lie to her brother, for the timing, for how it must have looked. But not for the wanting itself. I think that's the part one fell for, if I'm being honest. Not the tension. The honesty underneath it, once she finally let it out. We don't talk about the age thing much anymore. Not because it disappeared, but because it stopped being the most interesting thing about us. That's the whole story. The one I promised myself I'd never tell anyone, and somehow ended up telling all of you instead. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? A slow burn like this one, a workplace romance, or something with a twist you won't see coming?